Okay, in this video, I'm going to teach you how to make a dynamic list type of view in React Javascript. This would also help you you could use this to make a table too, or various other things in uh, React, like various other designs, just using the same concept. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our project folder, into our source folder, and then create a new folder called components. And by the way, if you do not know how to set up a project in React yet, I will make some other videos where I teach you how to do that. And when I have them made, the links will be in the description and at the end of this video. Alright, and now in this component folder, we're going to add a file named dynamic list.jsx. And what JSX is it's kind of a wrapping language around JavaScript made for React. And um now in order to make this work, we're going to need to import a couple things into this JSX folder in order to use the React components we need. So you import React itself and component from React. And then we're going to go ahead and create a class down here and name it dynamic list. And now you must inherit from the component class we imported from React. And now before we get into coding this class, we want to make sure we remember to export it. So we're going to go down here and go export default dynamic list. And now we'll be able to use this in other classes as long as we import it. So the next thing we're going to do before we start in on this class is we're going to go set up some data that's going to be being fed into this. And it's going to be being fed into this through properties. And I'm going to explain more on what a property is in a second. So we're going to be passing the data to this from app.js. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this return. I'm going to change it from a function to a class. And I'm going to extend component here as well. And it wasn't imported for me, but it just automatically imported it now for me. If it doesn't do that to you, remember to come up here and type it. And now that I have that imported and I have the class set up here, I want to set a state for my application. So to do that, I'm going to type state here equals curly braces. And now we're going to put the items we're feeding into the dynamic list here. I'm going to name it dynamic list here. And it's going to be a list of object literals containing an ID and then the text that we want to go in between the list item brackets in our dynamic list. So we're going to have an ID of 1 in this one. I'm just going to call it item 1. And I'm going to do this 2 more times. So I'm going to have a list of 3 things. There we go. So now that we have that, we're going to write a render method here. Sorry, should have been inside this class. We're going to write a render method inside this class. And in this render method, that's going to be the HTML that's being returned and shown as a view. So we're going to want to use our dynamic list class. And now the properties I was talking about, they're passed through right here. So we can name the property whatever we want. I'm just going to name it list. And actually list might be a better name up here as well. So I'm going to name this list. And then down here, we go ahead and we put list equals. And we got to put curly braces because we're passing a JavaScript element here. And then I'm just going to pass this dot state dot list. So it passes this as a property to an instantiation of dynamic list. And we're then go back to the dynamic list class, and now we're going to write this class. So yet again, we're going to use the render method just to return some HTML. And inside this render method, we're going to make a variable called new list. This will hold the list after we've added the list item tags. And now to access the list that you passed in, you use the props of this class. So this.props, and then whatever the name of your property was that you set in the app class. So mine is going to be list. And now your first instinct here might be to use a for loop to make this new list. But in React, you cannot do this. You need to use the map function. So type this.list, this.props.list.map, and you're going to type whatever function you want to be applied to each item. And in this case, since we're making a dynamic list, we want to add li tags to each item. So we're going to have each list item. It's going to take one list item at a time, and then we're going to return each item in between li tags. And you've got to put curly braces around that. And we're going to want to store this in the new list variable. So I'm going to go back here, type new list equals, and then all we have to do is return our list. If you want an unordered list, use the ul tag. If you want an ordered one, use the ol. I want an unordered one, so I use the ul. And all we do is return this variable in between the unordered list tags. Now save all of this. Go ahead and go and just into your apps folder. And start your app. Now I've compiled my application and it seems as though I got an error. It looks like I forgot to return this in my app class. I forgot to return my dynamic list. It looks like I also forgot to import my dynamic list. So up at the top of your file, you got to type import and then your dynamic list. And then you gotta do from and wherever you have placed it. Mine is in the components, so I'll type it just like that. It's in the dynamic list, the components folder. The dynamic list file is where the class is. And then the last thing that I forgot to do was in the dynamic list, you actually need to take your list item and you see where you have li. You're gonna need to tell it what part of the object you want to be displayed there. So in this case, you're going to want the text to be displayed. And then you're also going to want to add a key to these li items for this to work. This is required by React so it can track these items better in the DOM and only update what it needs to update when it's working and state changes. So right here we'll type key, and the reason we put the ID in was so we could put that as the key here. So we'll put the ID right there. We'll reload it one more time, and I think it should work this time. Yep, there we go. Right up there we have our dynamic list, and so you can go back here, and because it's dynamic, you could change and add more items here into this list. As it said, a fourth, item 4, and it will automatically be added to the list without having to change any other code. And you can also take items out. Here we go. And that's how you make a dynamic list in React JavaScript. Thanks for watching. Remember to comment and subscribe. See you next time.